But before the Prime Minister joins us, I do want to talk about three critical things for our union. I look around this room and what I see is a bunch of people with ideas, with values, with vision and with a commitment not just to our union, not just to our members, but to the work you do and to the things that we share. The sort of country we want to live in, the sort of society we want, a decent Australia, a fairer Australia. But what I also see is a pretty feisty bunch of people who we've encouraged over the last few years to say, we want to be a different sort of union. We want to be a union led from the workplace. We want to be a union where people see every day in every way that it makes a difference to have a union, that it makes a difference to be involved in that union, and that it makes a difference to be led in your workplace by people you respect, people you listen to, people who will work with your employer when they've got good ideas and take them on when they don't. And that's the sort of union we're going to need to be, because I reckon we face some pretty big challenges ahead. So I want to talk to you about three things. First thing I want to talk to you about is growing our union. We're not going to win unless we build a union that has the size, the strength, the voice, the reach to take on some really big issues, to run really smart campaigns and to deliver for our members. I want to talk to you about bargaining, because bargaining is one of the things that we are good at as a union, that matters to our members, and where we face some pretty interesting times ahead. And I want to talk to you about politics, because we know politics matters for our members, and we know that we're going to have to engage in politics, and we find ourselves at the middle of the national political debates this year. But first, I guess I want to ask you probably a deeper question about why we're really here. Now, I suspect from what Michael said, some of you think that you're here to listen to the PM and have a few drinks. That may well be true. But I think we're also here because there are things that we all believe in, things that we think are important. And things that you do as a delegate, whether they're the small things like sitting with a workmate when they've got a counselling meeting with the boss, like actually talking to people about what matters in their workplace and what they want to change, or taking on the big things. Well, last year we came to a really critical point in our union where we said we've got to make some big decisions as an organisation. We've got to put together a plan that is bold enough to deal with some pretty extraordinary times ahead, and we've got to get our leaders engaged in that and part of that and committed to taking that on as a long-term objective for our organisation to build the sort of union we need to be. And we came up with three aspirations in terms of the things we believe in. We want to make our workplaces better. Sounds simple, it can be a little bit harder to deliver. We want to make our industries better. We're proud of the work our members do. We think it matters, and we actually want that work to deliver for Australians. We want it to deliver better services. We want it to deliver now, but also for a workforce, a population, an economy and a community whose needs are changing. And we want to make Australia better. As part of the union movement, we actually want to build the sort of country where, you know, I talked about this at the National Leaders Conference, when your kids get sick you can take them to hospital. When something goes wrong and you lose a job or someone in your family's got a disability, there's a safety net there that you don't fall through. The sort of country that we want to be part of, the sort of workplaces we want to be part of. Great aspirations, we're good at aspirations, but CPSU delegates don't tend to just aspire to things. They tend to be clever and practical and rather pushy. So, we like pushy. I like pushy. We knew that having that wish list wasn't going to be enough. We knew that we actually needed a plan to deliver on that, and we talked about a plan that we called Shaping Our Future. Now, we called it Shaping Our Future for a reason. We don't control the future, we don't dictate the future. It'd be nice because my future looks really awesome if I get to run the world. But we can have a role in shaping it, we absolutely can. So we said in that plan that there's 5 critical things we need to do to be that sort of union. We need to be a union that most employees want to join. We need to be a union that makes positive change every day, that shows what unions do every day. We need to be a union that delivers in bargaining. We need to be a union that'll take on the big issues in public and political debates. And we need to be a modern, professional, credible organisation. That's the sort of union we're going to need to be to win. And I want to talk about those three elements of that I want to put a challenge to you tonight before we hear from the Prime Minister. The first of those is growth. We are not going to win unless we build a much bigger, more powerful union. And I think we can do that, but I think it requires challenging ourselves and changing some of the things we've done. We're a very good union at punching above our weight. We deliver extraordinary outcomes with limited membership and limited density. If I look at the last round of APS bargaining, I'm incredibly proud of what we did. There are very few unions in this country who could deliver 127,000 employees voting no to enterprise agreements at the same time. And there are very few unions in this country who could deliver, in a really tough budget and political environment, actually delivering pay equity rises for 58 agencies and delivering, despite what Gary Gray might say, pay rises above 3% for 75% of APS workers. And that's great. But it's not enough, and it's not going to be enough. What we face ahead is pretty interesting. Coming out of this federal election, we will see one of two outcomes. We will either see a re-elected Labor government dealing with the same budget pressures, the same pressures about how to fund major reforms like the NDIS, improvements in education and Gonski and the like, while you've got falling revenues and a hell of a pushback from tax and big business about paying their fair share. Or we will see a coalition government that is attacking our members, their rights, their paying conditions and their jobs. And I am delighted that if we face that scenario, we made the right decision some years ago, which is to say we need power and leverage, and the only way we're going to get that is by lining up all our enterprise agreements to expire at once, so that we actually have the capacity to take on a service-wide fight rather than dribs and drabs where they pick us off over 3 years. Well, it might not have been what we chose, but the fact that we ended up having a fight during bargaining last time might be some of the best experience we've ever had, and certainly one we've learned from, and our council will be talking about that over the next 2 days. But we face a big challenge. We might be the first union in this country to run simultaneous protected action ballots for over 100,000 workers. That'd be pretty interesting. I would say one of the changes that quietly went through to the Fair Work Act last December might help, which is you can now do an electronic ballot for protected action. It was our idea, and we ran an anti-media strategy on it to ensure it got through the Parliament. So if you didn't hear your officials talking about it, there was a reason for that.
Don't tell the Fin Review, they still don't know.
Yeah. All right. So if we're going to grow, we need to recruit more members, and we need to not just do that when we're bargaining or when they've got a particular workplace issue or problem. Because for all that we focus on what we don't like in our workplaces, for all that we focus on what we want to improve, the reality is when we go out and talk to people in our workplaces, a lot of the people in our workplaces are proud of the work they do, they like their jobs, they don't hate their employer, and they need someone to talk to them about why it makes a difference from the day they walk into that workplace, or for people who've been there for 10 years and never joined, why it makes a difference for them to be part of this union. So we're going to try some different things this year, and I've talked to our staff about this, and we're going to take this out to our council and to our delegates beyond this meeting to say we've got some new ideas that are working, we've tested them out, about how you actually go and have those conversations and ask those people to join the union. And it's really exciting as I'm here tonight. There are delegates in the room who are doing this. Hands up if you're one of the delegates who's just participated in our Canberra Graduates program. Hands up. What we've just seen these guys do, I know you can clap them in a moment. What we've just seen these guys do is talk to graduates who've just got the best job of their lives, incredibly competitive jobs. They don't have a problem with their boss. They might well in times to come, but they don't yet. And they're joining the union because people like them are talking to them about why it makes a difference. Now, the challenge I'm going to put to you guys is there's lots of union work you might like doing, the stuff you might be comfortable doing. People have some weird preferences. Some people actually like going to consultative committee meetings. It's disturbing, but there you go. The challenge I'm going to put to you is every single person in this room and a much bigger group needs to go out this year talking to people who aren't members of our union about joining. And I think we can do that, and we're going to have to do that, because let me tell you, I am not fighting the fights ahead with one hand tied behind our back, wishing that we had more members, more reses, more capacity. We need to untie that, because we're going to need every weapon in our arsenal, and we're going to need to be a much bigger union. All right, I want to pose the question, and I'd like an honest answer rather than a I'm feeling the vibe sort of answer. How many people in this room actually think growth is fundamental to us winning? Yeah, we get it. So that's what we're going to do this year, and it's going to be fun. Some of it's going to work, some of it's not. Some of it's going to explode in particular workplaces. You may or may not be the glittering success story, or the one where we think, oh, we probably could have tried something else different there. It doesn't matter, but it matters that you do it and you keep doing it. All right. If we do that, I'm confident that we can deal with what lies ahead. We do face a political environment where we are heading into a federal election where public services are at the heart of that debate, and you'll hear from the Prime Minister on that. Now, a lot of people have tried to define politics over the years. Some people say it's the art of the possible. Someone actually once described it as Hollywood for ugly people. Harsh, very harsh. But we made a decision as a union a while ago that we could get a lot more done by being inside the game than outside. It's a nasty, ugly, brutal game, but it's one where we can make a difference and where it matters that we're part of it. Now, the reality is we couldn't sit it out even if we wanted to, because our members' jobs, the services they provide, and for our members outside the public sector, the rights that you've won are absolutely at the heart of what we are looking at. We see right-wing think tanks like the CIS and IPA who are pushing an incredibly radical agenda that seems designed to make Tony Abbott look reasonable, quite a big ask. You know, the most recent ideas on the weekend included, let's privatise the ABC. We don't need one of those, surely. Let's cut 24,000 jobs. I saw Marion Payne earlier from DAF Quarantine. Apparently we can abolish that whole department. I'm not sure that Australian agriculture is that thrilled with the idea of not having a quarantine service, and I'm not sure that our export meat industry, I can see Phil Davidge up the back of the room, is really that delighted at the notion of no longer being able to export meat because we don't have any meat inspectors, but apparently none of this stuff that public servants do makes a difference. So, we've got a huge job ahead of us, and they're getting a big free run. I'll just give you one quote from the IPA Director of Deregulation. Now, that's a good job to have, isn't it? Alan Moran said, public sector workers are normally far less productive than those of the private sector because of the absence of profit-driven discipline, difficulties in terminating staff, and the costs in raising revenue to pay for them. Now, I don't know about you, but every public sector agency I've ever seen has got more objectives, targets, and outcomes than Westpac could possibly invent, you know, but that's the agenda we're facing. So we've got to take that agenda on, we've got to take it on amongst our membership, we've got to take it on as part of the union movement, and we will be backing the ACTU's Secure Jobs agenda, which is a really important long-term fight for workers in this country to get decent jobs. And we will be backing it as part of the Labor movement, working with the ALP in the lead up to the election. It is going to be a long, tough debate. We've been using over the last few months the work we do around the federal budget to be advocating for public services and jobs. We haven't agreed with everything government has done, and you'll hear me say that in front of the Prime Minister tonight, as those of you at the National Leaders Conference heard me say last year. But what we do know is there is a profound and deep difference in a view on the role of government between Labor and the Coalition, and we face the most radical agenda we have seen in generations. And that's a fight worth having, because let me tell you, for those of you who haven't heard it, as we look at where these ideas are coming from, I'm hearing stories out of the UK around the same sort of reforms dressed up under big society rhetoric, where the only winners are massive multinational companies who are taking over virtually every core function of government. And guess what? In Queensland, Peter Costello just put out a commission of audit that said they should outsource pretty much everything. Who does his consulting firm ESG work with? Serco, who's just won the biggest contracts in the UK. So if you wonder where your jobs are going to go, that's where they're going to go. They're going to be shitty, insecure, low-paid jobs, and it's going to be very hard to get them back. So these are the fights we face, and that's a fight worth taking on. But we know that us taking on that fight means that we've got to be prepared to talk to our members, to people in our workplaces, to people in our families, our communities, about politics and about why this election matters. And I want to say one thing to you about this. This election isn't just about who wins government. This election is also about us building the support for the values we've got, the values we know that most Australians share, for the work of our members, and taking those fights on. Now, we may lose some of those fights along the way, but they are fights worth having, and we have got to be one of the voices in that debate. And I think we can make a difference. Whether that difference means that something changes and Labor actually wins government in September this year, or whether that means, as a union movement and a Labor movement, we stop the Coalition getting outright control of the Senate, whether that means that we actually damage Tony Abbott's claim of a mandate, or whether that means we turn his government into a 1 or 2 term rather than a 3 or 4 term government. We don't control all of that, but we and other unions, the union movement and the Labor movement, have got a powerful role in what happens and what comes out of that election, and what the capacity is for us to take those fights on in coming years. So, I've talked about growth and why we need to take it on, and I think it's the absolutely critical thing our union needs to do no matter what happens this year. I've talked about bargaining. We've got a fight that's worth having. We're well up for it. We've got a very detailed plan that we'll be taking through our Governing Council and beyond, and you might be surprised, but the first plans on that start now. There are things we will be asking you to do in April, May, June, July this year, which are about our capacity to take on bargaining whoever's in government, and if the Coalition does win the election, to take on the big fights that lay ahead. And the work we do now is absolutely critical, because by September or October, time is tight. So we will be asking you to step up. We'll be asking you to get active and get involved in those processes. And I think that's something I'm confident you're going to be able to do. The final thing I want to say is I'm incredibly proud of this union. I'm incredibly proud of the work that you do. I'm incredibly proud of the team and the staff that I lead. And I know we are a union that has been around for 100 years. We have been through tough times before. We are better placed now than we ever have been before to take these fights on. I reckon they're fights worth having. I think it's something worth being part of. And I'm actually pretty excited about taking that journey with you, because more than at any other time, what you do absolutely makes a difference. It makes a difference in the sort of country we're going to live in and what you're going to look back on in many years to come. So let's get that fight going, and let's win a few.